Well, I hope you had a better weekend than Elon Musk apparently had. My goodness, good morning. It is great to be here on KCMO Talk Radio. You thought you had a bad Valentine's Day on Friday? Oh, man, you ain't seen nothing. So Elon Musk got put on blast on Friday by a woman named Ashley St. Clair. She is a conservative influencer, whatever that word means in 2025. She has a lot of social media followers. Who she's influencing, I don't know, but that's what they call these individuals, I suppose. And she took to X on Friday night on Elon Musk's platform and put out a note saying that for 5 months, she has been the father of Elon Musk's 13th child. There's a Valentine's Day surprise for you right there, huh? So I don't care how bad your Valentine's Day was. I don't care if you dropped the ball on flowers. I don't care if you were going to propose and you got rejected. It doesn't matter what happened to you. It was not worse than Elon Musk's Valentine's when he got put on blast on the multi-billion-dollar platform that he owns by a young woman who put out a note on that platform saying, I am the father of your 13th child, and the tabloids have been coming after me, so I'm going to put this out there ahead of them. That is a rough Valentine's Day for Elon Musk. Ashley St. Clair writing on X, 5 months ago, I welcomed a new baby into the world. Elon Musk is the father. I have not previously disclosed this to protect our child's privacy and safety, but in recent days, it has become clear that the tabloid media intends to do so, regardless of the harm it will cause. I intend to allow our child to grow in a normal and safe environment. For that reason, I ask that the media honor our child's privacy and refrain from invasive reporting. Now, let me just tell you right now, I don't believe that. Because I didn't see any major tabloids start to do any additional reporting on this beyond what this person posted on social media, Ashley St. Clair. So that tells me that she was just waiting for a moment to blow it up, and for whatever reason, she picked 6 p.m. on Valentine's Day. Did Elon forget the flowers? Was he too busy working on DOGE to remember that he just had a 13th kid and should probably do something for the baby mama? I don't know. Now, listen, do I respect Elon Musk for this if this did happen? No. This would be, I believe, his 4th baby mama. Even Tyreek Hill is like, whoa, buddy, come on now. Take it easy. All right? Although he's got a ways to go to get to Tyreek.
Bruh.
Yeah. But here's the thing. It doesn't mean I feel any differently about what Elon Musk is doing when it comes to DOGE. I don't respect Elon Musk's personal life. I don't respect the guy who's on his 4th baby mama, even if he is the richest man in the world. It doesn't matter, right? We say this about athletes. We say it about rap stars. Other musicians. It doesn't matter. It's not an admirable or respectable quality to have. But Elon Musk is somebody who I do trust when it comes to helping Donald Trump and helping this administration clean out a lot of the bureaucratic fat that exists around the federal government. So both of these things can be true at the same time. I do not look up to Elon Musk as a man, as a father. I don't. And I don't think most decent people should. Do I look up to his business acumen? Yeah. He may be the Einstein of our generation. Do I look up to his ability to figure out through DOGE in 3.5, 4 weeks the amount of garbage that is out there in the federal government, the transparency that is being shared through DOGE on the waste in our government? Absolutely. No doubt about it. And that's where we can separate all these things. Would it be great if Elon Musk was the father of a bunch of kids with like one woman? Yeah, I'd prefer that. I would. But I'm not going to use this as like, oh, man, I can't trust Elon anymore. He had 3 baby mamas before this allegedly happened. So what's a 4th at this point? It's not like I ever thought he was the most stand-up guy out there. And people that knew his background probably felt that way as well. This is not necessarily anything to celebrate. But it does make you hopefully feel better about whatever your bust of a Valentine's Day may have been on Friday. So just know I'm here for you, and Elon's trying to make you feel better as well on a Monday morning on KCMO Talk Radio. Now, speaking of DOGE, Tim Kaine, Rockhurst High School graduate right here in Kansas City, was on Fox News Sunday, which airs at 10 o'clock Sunday morning here on KCMO. And he was asked about DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, that, of course, Elon and his band of characters are being put in charge of, trying to find the waste around the federal government. And Tim Kaine went on Fox News Sunday and made the allegation that what he's really worried about is the veterans. And what he's really worried about, and you've seen this talking point thrown out there, is the fact that people's private information and sensitive information is going to be put out there to the world, and you can't possibly do that. How dare you? No. How dare you? So here is Kansas City's own Rockhurst graduate Tim Kaine on Fox News Sunday.
Versus outrage about some of the stuff that they're uncovering.
Yeah, I think my outrage is about who they're hurting. I don't care about the bromance. Who cares about the bromance? I don't like letting unelected officials, post. Yesterday, the DOGE guys post classified information on their website, and they had to realize, we didn't realize that agency was a classified agency. You shouldn't let people run rampage through offices that have classified information. And again, I view this in Virginia from the perspective of we're a veteran-heavy state. There's a war on veterans. When they're slashing in the VA, and when 30% of the federal workforce is veterans, compared to like 2 to 3% of the civilian workforce, you do indiscriminate cuts. I'll tell you, it hurts. It hurts veterans.
Tim Kaine, big veteran guy now, Rockhurst's finest. That's the angle that they're going for. Oh, you're going to let all the veterans go. Okay, yes, there are many veterans who work for the federal government. That is true. No doubt about it. They should be admired for giving back to their country, serving their country. But if they're doing something else in the federal government that we view at and say to ourselves, boy, that is not necessary right now, that is a duplication of duty, that is a waste of American taxpayers' monies, you don't have a right to take money from the taxpayer that is not money well spent simply because you served. Like, I'm sorry, that's not how this goes. Now, if you did serve, you obviously have a tremendous amount of benefits, and probably not enough. I say that as somebody who admires those who did serve, right? But it doesn't mean you just get to hide in some other random government job that is not a necessary function of government. It's not how this works. But Tim Kaine's trying to look like the moderate here and the rah-rah military guy by saying, people who served are going to get laid off. I mean, it's just such a hollow argument is what it really is. And DOGE pushed back on his assertion that they're posting classified documents on their website. DOGE shared early this morning at midnight that Tim Kaine's comments on Fox News Sunday are inaccurate. The referenced classified information, they write, is actually public FedScope data posted publicly by the Office of Personnel Management in March of 2024. And they post a link to it. There's a link that DOGE shares on its official X account responding to Tim Kaine and calling him out for this lie, saying there's nothing about this that was classified information. Please spare me. So they are grasping at straws. And I'm telling you, this is not going to play out well for them. It's just not, John.
So, bromance, do you think there's any bromance talking points here, bromance?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't have any, do you?
So, no, bromance. Just thinking. I heard that twice. You had to say it twice real quick. So I thought, okay, there's one. And then rather than having access, you're running rampage.
I know, right? Running ramp, yes.
No, they just have access.
Yeah. See, what they're trying to do, it's like when there's a new couple in high school and people are trying to break them up.
Yeah.
That's what this is.
Mm-hmm.
This is like high school all over again with these people. Trump and Elon are buddies. We got to break them up and get them between them. This is not good for us. Oh, my gosh. Grow up, please. Please. Now, the mayor of Kansas City also upset about something that he claims DOGE has cut that will impact Kansas City. We'll get that to you coming up, 913-408-7957. And welcome you in on a Monday, President's Day morning. We're here for you on 95.7 FM, KCMO Talk Radio. President's Day, Monday morning. We're here for you on KCMO. Hey, if you're a veteran in Kansas City and you hear from Kansas City's own Tim Kaine, who is now a Virginia U.S. Senator, as you did on Fox News Sunday, we played the clip right before the break, and Tim Kaine comes out and he goes, hey, with this DOGE stuff, I'm just looking out for the veterans, man. Oh, please. I'm just not buying it for a second.
Nobody cares.
I'm not. What about you, Dennis in Bonner Springs? What's up, buddy?
Hey, Pete. It's kind of ironic that you came up with this Senator Kaine thing. Not only should he be worried about the veterans, he needs to worry about the active service people. I don't know if you saw over the weekend about the lost money for feeding our active servicemen that was on Fox.
I did not see that story on Fox.
My son, who was in the Army out of Fort Carson, lived through that, where they didn't have food to eat. They had lima beans and toast on Fort Carson. I believe there's 5 mess halls on Fort Carson. 2 of them would be open. By the time you get across the fort to eat and get in line, you couldn't get your food because you had to be back. But here's the thing. They have I forget what they call it. It's like a stipend, where if you don't live on base or, out of dorm, that you get X amount of dollars for food. My son qualified for it for like 15 months. He got it 1 month. The last month he was in the service. We're not taking care of our active service. We're not taking care of our veterans. They need to get off their backsides, because if they can take care of these other people like they do, we can take care of those people.
Well, this is a great point. And yes, the story goes back to Thanksgiving. So I found the story and I remember it. I didn't realize Fox brought it back over the weekend. But basically in Fort Carson, Colorado, they didn't have really enough food to feed the active service members over the holidays, which is just an embarrassment.
They didn't have fruit for months.
Yeah.
Anyway, hey, thanks for letting me vent, man, because it lit my you-know-what up the other Saturday night so much that I couldn't go to sleep. I was so angry because I lived with my son. I would go out there every 2 months, take him to Sam's Club and buy him $400 worth of food so he could eat.
Yeah. And now Tim Kaine is
thank you.
That is Dennis. Thank you, and I hope your son's doing well. And now Tim Kaine's on Fox News Sunday, Rockhurst graduate, and he's out there saying, "Oh boy, I'm just worried about those who served who are now in some job courtesy of the U.S. government who might be losing their job." Like, Tim, please, as Dennis just said on the call, welcome to the real world. Number one, and number two, we have active duty members right now who are dealing with some of the things that he just referenced there at Fort Carson for going on 15 months, where he's driving out from Kansas City to Colorado, Fort Carson, to bring his kid to Sam's Club. That's just insane. And those are the men and women who are supposed to be getting incredible treatment. Now, back here in Kansas City, obviously, you're seeing a lot of people overreact to DOGE and what DOGE ultimately is going to do and has been doing, which is cutting a lot of government fat. We are running a $2 trillion deficit, okay? We are $36 trillion in debt. This is no longer up for debate. Things have to be cut. I know everyone's going to claim that their great pet project is the most important thing ever, and we just can't live without it, but it's just not true. Never has been true, never will be true. Your business, if it's shrunk, has had to cut. In this industry and media, we've had to make some tough cuts in recent years because there's more competition. Now, we're still doing great here on KCMO Talk Radio, and that's because of you, the listener, supporting us and sharing this show with friends, with family. We are growing and growing rapidly. That's why we got Kevin Keatsman now in the mix at 10 o'clock. But, it has been a tough run for media. There have been many layoffs in this space. You've seen the headlines over the last several months and couple of years because that's how business needs to operate. If your revenues are not where you need them to be, you got to make tough decisions. But if, God forbid, we ask that of our government while running a $2 trillion deficit, we insist that the world is somehow going to end. Mayor Lucas put this up here in Kansas City last night on X. He writes here, cuts by Elon Musk continue to devastate American communities like Kansas City. Now, I find this interesting. Once again, he's not talking about Trump. Elon Musk is now the boogeyman. And he writes here, and he shares a screenshot of a notice, a termination notice for the Ivanhoe Farmers Market Food Equality and Minority Farmer Empowerment Initiative. He says Ivanhoe recently had funding eliminated that supports urban food production, backyard gardeners, local growers, and inner-city farmers market, and resources to provide healthy food to young mothers. The mayor says we will work with them to see where we can add support, but this is being echoed at organizations across our city. It is heartbreaking for our communities and will set back healthy food options, agriculture, and fundamentally our community long term. And we're just one place. The mayor adds, stay alert, organize, and make a difference. Well, I don't know about you, but there's a lot of great organizations in Kansas City that people can donate to. Mm-hmm. Harvesters come to mind. I'd give money to them, and they would be glad to help people in difficult spots around Kansas City get the food that they need.
These programs can continue, right?
Yeah,
they don't need to be with government aid. That's the whole point. When you get beyond providing the basic services, now you're spending money you may or may not have in the future.
Yeah, this sounds like a luxury. And we are not in the business of spending money on luxuries anymore. We don't have the money to do it. The money literally does not exist. But the mayor puts up this note, and he's acting like Elon single-handedly is just saying, you know what? That's it. That's it. No more inner-city food markets in Kansas City. That's right. We're going to take healthy food options away from young mothers. With what? A weekly farmer's market to go buy some corn? It's just, it's a disingenuous narrative is what it is. Backyard gardeners and local growers? Why is the government funding that? Why is our federal tax dollars going to some individual in Kansas City growing, I don't know, strawberries? I don't understand it. Now, I know, and some will sit there and they will scream, and I know some of you are yelling at your radio right now, insisting that, well, you know, the farmers get plenty of tax breaks and they get incentivized and the whole thing. Okay, yeah, some of that is absolutely true. I'll give you that. No doubt about it. I will. Okay, and that's something that should be looked at as well. Everything has to be looked at. The Pentagon has to be looked at. All these things need to be scrutinized, including, yes, money that is going to backyard gardeners, local growers, and an inner-city farmers market. If Kansas City sees such value in a farmers market, I suppose they can fund it. Overland Park is about to dump a lot of money into its farmers market. I don't know if that's a great idea, but that's what Overland Park wants to do. So why would Kansas City be any different? If you're a Kansas City resident, I haven't been to this farmers market, but you tell me, is this must-have? 913-408-7957. Pete Mundo on KCMO Talk Radio, 95.7 FM. Well, you tell me, if you are someone who's an urban farmer or is involved in the farmers market in the Ivanhoe part of Kansas City, are you sitting there and are you looking at this story and you saying to yourself, boy, how are we going to survive in Kansas City? How are we possibly going to make it? This after a termination notice was sent from the USDA to the Ivanhoe Neighborhood Council, saying that basically as of this writing, you guys are no longer going to be able to, at least through us, fund some of your urban food production, backyard gardeners, local growers, the inner city farmers market, and other things that the federal government has been involved with. Shane is on KCMO Talk Radio. Hey, Shane, good morning. Go ahead.
Good morning, Pete. Yeah, I had 2 points, which was first of what you're talking about is they got seeds in fruit and seeds in vegetables. People plant gardens in their own backyard. Like, I do a pretty big garden every year and donate to our local church and people around, and there's lots of others that do, and I'd be willing to bet that our church isn't the only one that does that. So there's plenty of backyards or plenty of neighbors with backyards, or if you live in apartment complexes, I'd be willing to bet there's more than enough apartment managers that would say if everyone wanted to in the apartment complex, they could do a small raised bed garden or do it off your balcony or something like that. There's plenty of ways to feed yourself. And the second point I was going to make is back to the whole, decrease in jobs for the veterans. It's frustrating to a guy who is a veteran to hear all these politicians use us as the crutch for their talking points that they got to take care of us. And maybe I do and maybe I don't speak for the entire veteran community, but it gets really old hearing things from politicians. We need to support our troops. We need to support our troops. And that's literally the end of the support. It's just a conversation saying that they need to support it. And it's on both sides of the aisle, it appears a lot to be a way of virtue signaling for themselves. And I know I'm not alone in being the only guy that feels that way. So,
yeah,
I appreciate it.
Thank you, Shane. I appreciate that. Listen, that is true to a large degree. There is a lot of that goes on. You can't deny it, right? When it comes to how much people use support of the troops in some ways for political purposes, I think that's accurate. I certainly think that when it's coming from somebody like Tim Kaine, Virginia U.S. Senator, who we played a clip from earlier on Fox News Sunday, saying, well, he doesn't like DOGE because it's going to result in a lot of people who have served the country who now work in government potentially losing their jobs. Well, I'm sorry, but that's not how this is supposed to go. The government is not supposed to be a jobs program for people. If these individuals who served this nation have skill sets that are desirable in the free market, they'll find another job. Or if they're incredibly valuable to national defense or something else that keeps the nation safe, then they should keep their jobs, right? They're not all going to keep their jobs. They shouldn't all keep their jobs. Because the point of the government is not to keep people employed. It's to provide basic services to the American people, right? Give the private sector the ability to thrive. And yes, you need a strong public sector. I understand that. You need defense. You need, roads and bridges, although that's more of a state issue. But you need all these things from government. But acting like, oh my gosh, we can't possibly cut anything because we hire veterans in the government, I don't care. I don't care because guess what? Great veterans are going to find great jobs. And ones that already are really valuable are going to stay there. And if one or two that are really valuable accidentally or, the government makes a mistake and lets them go, they might end up making more money in the private sector anyway. Do you know how desirable it is? Or at least it was. Maybe in the woke moments that we've been in the last 5-10 years, this might not be the case. But in many lines of work, in many industries, if you have a competent veteran that can do the job that you're looking for, man, there are businesses from Wall Street to law firms, if you have that degree, to maybe less so tech, but they want people that have that kind of a background because they can teach you, they can coach you. And what is one thing in today's job environment that is lacking? Consistency. Showing up every day. Having a halfway decent attitude. Those are lost arts in workforces around America. You don't have to worry about that with those who served. You don't have to have any worry, for the most part, about things like that with those who served. Those are highly sought after job qualities that veterans are overwhelmingly likely to have. So please, this whole if the government's not going to employ the veterans, who's going to do it? Trust me, there are plenty of people that will do it. I promise you that. 913-408-7957. And speaking of this whole conversation, I was watching Kansas City A Week in Review on Kansas City PBS over the weekend. I was on there last week, and I was not on there this week, but I still like to watch the show, especially when I'm not on it, because I want to see what they talked about. So they talk about the top issues in Kansas City, weekly show, Friday night and Sunday morning on Kansas City PBS. And they had a solid panel. Now, if I'm not on it, it's not as good as it could have been, but solid enough panel. And Dave Helling, staple in this town, former editorial writer for the Kansas City Star. And Dave's a good guy. We've been on the show many times before. Pleasant. We don't agree on much, but it's always, we always get along. At least from my perspective, that's the case. I can't speak for him. But it's fine. It's good. It is what it is. But there was a conversation going on around if there are deep cuts to the federal workforce, how this would impact Kansas City. Because the government is the largest employer in Kansas City. And here's what Dave Helling said about that.
Kansas City depends on the federal workforce. The General Services Administration, which is headquartered here, all of the people who work there, who work for the U.S. Attorney's Office, the IRS, all of them are living in this sort of weird limbo land in terms of whether their employment can go forward. And if there is a significant reduction in the federal workforce, Kansas City will feel that pain. There's no question about it.
So the federal government is the largest employer in greater Kansas City. It's about 2.5% of the workforce. So a 10% cut would trim, give or take, about 3,000 jobs. That's not a reason to not cut. It's not. Because the long-term ramifications of tens of trillions of dollars in debt, the long-term ramifications of a $2 trillion deficit far outweigh, 3,000 people might be out of work in a metro area that has 2.5 million people in it. And here's the little catch, right? If somebody is defending not laying people off from the federal government under the guise of, there's going to be deep pain to the economy in Kansas City, what's it possibly going to mean for us as a whole? Well, you're making the assumption that these people can't find jobs in the private sector. Many of them, God willing, will if they have any reasonable skill set, just like we talked about with the veterans. And guess what? If they don't have a skill set that is in any way transitory to the private sector, then guess what? They were worthless to begin with. Just say it. Okay? Just say the quiet part out loud. It actually feels really good. If they get laid off from the government and they can't find another job, then that's the exact reason they should have gotten laid off. And instead of working for the government, what they could end up doing now is working in the private sector, and that private sector job actually funds the government. It does two things at once. It saves the government money, and you actually fund the government in the private sector by then paying taxes from the private sector into the government coffers. It's amazing how that works. And this is not to rail on all federal employees. It's not. It's not my point. I know there's many of you that listen to the show, that are fans of the show, that I've met at many of our events. But come on. This conversation is absurd, that you can't dare touch the federal workforce. I'm just over it. And most Americans are in this notion, I can't possibly lose my job. I work for the government. What do you think people in the private sector deal with every day? There could be people driving to work today right now in Kansas City for the last time, and they don't know it. But God forbid, the government operates like that? How dare you?
You're right. Some people may lose their job because of a decision by the federal government.
Very possible.
How about that?
Did you spend your Valentine's Day on Friday night trying to impress the wokest of woke in Kansas City? No, I didn't. I don't think many of you did. But there were some that chose that route on Friday night. Good morning. Happy Monday. It's President's Day. And we are glad that you are here on KCMO 95.7 FM. If you're off today, you can still stream us on the app or just tell your Google Home or your Alexa to play KCMO Talk Radio. So 1 week after federal agents went to El Potro Mexican Cafe in Liberty, there was a big event there on Friday night, and it was organized by Jackson County legislator Manny Abarca. Now, Manny Abarca, of course, is not someone who represents Clay County, where Liberty is. But never let a crisis go to waste, right? Never let a political opportunity that you can take advantage of go to waste. So he decides to go up there to Liberty, to El Potro, where Homeland Security showed up and took in 12 people. Now, as I told you last week, there was a lot of misinformation around what happened at El Potro. There were 12 people taken into custody due to a tip that was received about workers there at El Potro Mexican restaurant in Liberty. And one of those individuals allegedly had a warrant out for their arrest for sexually abusing a child. They did not go there because they knew that person was there. They just happened to stumble upon that person. That was misreported out of the gates. So it's not clear on where exactly these 12 individuals are, what their statuses are at this point in time, but we do know they were taken into custody up there in Liberty. And for some reason, I would think that this is something that, regardless of who you voted for in the last election, you would say to yourself, okay, well, certainly if it resulted in the potential arrest of an alleged child predator, how could we be against this? Who would possibly be against getting an alleged child predator off the streets if this individual happened to be working at El Potro Mexican Cafe? What if your kid bumped into this employee at the restaurant? What if, this individual was using the bathroom while your minor child was using the bathroom? God forbid, right? Like, this is not political. This is, okay, good. We got a bad person potentially off the streets of Liberty, Missouri. This is great. Well, nope. This is not great, you see. Fox 4 was up there for this little event that took place on Friday night. I mean, tell me you're having a bad Valentine's Day without telling me you're having a bad Valentine's Day. I know what I'll do. I'll go to El Potro. Going to be a lot of single people there for this woke event. And this is what it sounded like from Fox 4 and its reporting on Friday night.
Unfortunately, I'm not surprised because I feared that something like this would be in the works and would come to fruition.
Laura Gitterman is an English as a second language teacher. She works with a lot of immigrants and refugees and says that her students are getting concerned.
I've had students ask me for their parents, where can they be adopted if the parents get deported? I've had students saying, I'm carrying my papers with me to school because I'm afraid ICE is coming. How many windows, how many doors do we have in school? Will I be safe?
How many windows, how many doors do we have in school? Why? Are students talking about fleeing ICE? I mean, fleeing law enforcement is illegal, number one. And number two, why don't you stop scaring your students? You know as well as I do that if ICE was going into elementary or middle or high schools around the country and arresting people and rounding them up, it would be leading every newscast in this country. That's not happening. So why don't you do your job as a teacher, Laura Gitterman, and tell your students to calm down? If they have papers, they're not going to be dragged out of their algebra class and, thrown back in whatever Central or South American country. That's not what's going on here. Now, up in Liberty, what happened is, once again, there was a tip, and there were a handful of people who were taken out of the restaurant. We're not totally clear on why exactly that happened. We do know that one person is alleged to have been a child predator. Good riddance to them. Get them off the streets. And by the way, they should never be back on the streets. But having these individuals show up at the restaurant and say, I teach these kids and oh, boy, these kids are asking how many windows and doors there are in the building. For what purpose? To run away when ICE shows up for them? It doesn't even make sense. I mean, if you have papers, first off, it's not happening. Second, if it was, and you have a status to be here, well, you're not going anywhere anyway right now. It's all just emotions. It's not based in reality. It's not based in what's actually happening. It's not based in fact. But these are the kind of people that were drawn to El Potro on Friday night to what? Show their support for the restaurant having an alleged child predator on staff? It's not, I have not been to the restaurant, so I'm not here to knock it, but I'm certainly not going to go out of my way to show support for a restaurant that may have had a child predator working at the restaurant, where I'm sure that children are eating on a regular basis. Like, I'm not going to sit here and feel sympathy for that person or that business.
It is totally shutting down the livelihood of families. It is taking away parents, aunties. It is having children and other people suffer from the repercussions of generalizing and stereotyping a group of people.
I have to gather my thoughts sometimes. That way,
I wasn't aware there was any generalizing or stereotyping.
I wasn't aware of that either.
Okay,
I was not aware.
At least
of that.
as I understand the definition of the word.
No, I was not aware of that either.
Yeah,
I want to play that clip one more time because there's so many different angles to a 12-second clip here.
It is totally shutting down the livelihood of families. It is taking away parents, aunties. It is having children and other people suffer from the repercussions of generalizing and stereotyping a group of people.
Let's talk about other people suffering from the repercussions. Has this teacher up in the Northland who talked to Fox 4, was she offended by how Laken Riley's family has had to deal with the repercussions of open border policies and sanctuary cities that resulted in her daughter getting killed on a University of Georgia running trail? Have we talked about those people who are suffering? Is the suffering of American citizens part of the conversation here and part of the equation here, or do they not count? Do they not matter? When you talk about shutting down the livelihood, being an American is a privilege. Working in America is a privilege. Working in America is not a right, especially if someone has broken the law to achieve it. And that's how it should be, and that's how it's going to remain, at least for the next couple of years.
I like to bring up the generalities that go with all cases when children are separated from parents. See, that happens here in America to American citizens every day when they're arrested for DUIs, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a general thing, and it is never specific to the incident.
It's a great point.
They like to bring that one up.
Yeah,
separating.
How many parents have been separated from kids in Kansas City because their parents committed crimes? Happens all the time.
Well, it'll go on today.
Yeah, it'll happen today in this town. I guarantee it, right? And just know, too, that any of these people organizing these little events at El Potro in Liberty or anywhere else, the American people aren't buying it. Poll came out last week from CBS. It had Donald Trump's approval at 53%. But guess what? His deportation policy has a 59% approval. His deportation policy is more popular than he is individually. So replaying and reusing the playbook from 2017 is not going to work. People saw what a failure the border was the last 4 years, and for a lot of people, they got red-pilled by it. They realize it's bad for America. It's bad policy. It doesn't mean everybody involved is a bad person. There's a nuance to this. I know some aren't interested in nuanced conversations. It does not mean everyone who came here illegally is a bad person. That's not the accusation. But you have to have standards. You have to have laws. And guess what? If you don't abide by those laws and abide by those standards, then you have a lawless country and a lawless society. And people are not on board with this shtick that people are trying to push, whether it's at El Potro or anywhere else in the country. Coming up next on KCMO, our buddy Mike Thompson, Kansas State Center. He is going to be here at the bottom of the hour on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. But next, one of the most popular trash TV shows had one of the great woke moments I have ever seen. We will play that for you next on KCMO Talk Radio. You guys ever watch Love is Blind? Have you ever seen that show? I'm guessing John has not.
No, I haven't seen it.
Okay.
I have not seen it.
I know of.
My wife has watched it.
Oh, okay.
But I have not watched it with her.
You're aware of it at least.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So with Valentine's Day in the rearview mirror, maybe you are by yourself, but just know it could always be worse. All right? You could always be this guy on Love is Blind. Before I play this clip, I'll just set the stage in case you're not familiar with the show on Netflix that has become one of their biggest hits when it comes to like original series that they're doing on Netflix. Basically what the show is they take, give or take 20 young people, 10 guys, 10 women, and they date each other without ever seeing each other. They basically talk to each other through different rooms. But the idea is you propose to somebody and you fall in love without ever seeing the person. So the question is, well, is love really blind? Or once you get into the real world, you propose, you then get to see the person, and then you spend like 30 days living with them until you're supposed to get married. And then you go to the altar and you either say yes or you say no. So it's an interesting concept. I mean, I've seen it. And listen, it's great trashy television if you're in the mood for that. And sometimes after a week of, being here and spending time with John and Mark, trashy television is not the worst thing in the world.
Oh, I thought you were leaving the trashy TV behind for something a little more highbrow there.
No. Listen, sometimes my brain has to shut off. So I will deal with it. It's awful, though. It's absolutely awful. The people on the show are never all that bright. There's a reason they're trying to be reality TV stars. And also, Netflix does quite a job making the show, in general, fairly woke. But once again, if you get over that, it's just mindless. But this was all time. I saw this over the weekend, and I did not see this myself. I saw the clip on social media. And the most recent one was in Minneapolis, home of George Floyd. So naturally, these two individuals are dating each other. Remember, they can't see each other. They're on either side of a wall. And they're on a date. And this young woman, they both happen to be white, I think that's notable here, goes off on this young guy about how he doesn't properly support George Floyd and Black Lives Matter. And the dude is like totally caught off guard. He clearly doesn't care about politics. He's just trying to find a wife. And needless to say, if this, was a date that you were on, it might go a little bit differently because this guy, man, he was such a sucker. Let's roll the tape. Here it is.
But no, I'm falling in love with you.
I love hearing that from you. Thank you.
I know that we can have so much fun together, but I think we should talk about some things. Maybe having an idea about politics and what we think about some controversial things. I think that's really important.
I agree.
I grew up in a conservative household. But yeah, I really didn't get into politics, or I didn't get interested until Trump took office and George Floyd.
I'm kind of ignorant towards that stuff. I didn't vote in the last election. As long as I don't know, it's not gonna, do much, so.
That is so annoying.
I'm sorry.
So, George Floyd. That obviously hit home because George Floyd happened in Minneapolis. What are your thoughts on Black Lives Matter?
I'm not one way or another. I just kind of keep out of it.
I think it's very valuable and important to think about those things. And knowing you, it's not like you're actively racist. But I personally believe what happened to George Floyd and everything else that happened, I don't think that's right at all.
Yeah.
What's so important is to speak up for things that are happening around us, right? You know, like our voice really does matter.
Yeah, I've just kind of been staying out of it.
I don't like those answers.
Run, buddy, run! Run!
She's trying to white guilt him.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, that is your classic white-guilted, indoctrinated college graduate on the dating scene. And that poor chump is just sitting there taking it. First, I felt bad for him. Then I'm like, dude, would you grow a pair already, please? Man. Imagine being on a date. And that's why, listen, Kate and I have been together 17 years coming up this spring. And I never had to deal with this insanity of the dating world the last several years. And I'm so glad I haven't, because could you imagine going on a date and that conversation comes up? So what do you think of George Floyd? Well, you know what I think? I think it's time for you to buy your own dinner and drinks, and I'll see you never if that ever came up. And I was on a date like that. And that guy's just sitting there, I'm not that political. I try to stay out of it. It's like, buddy, run. There's no choice, okay? She will be indoctrinating you in no time. So just be glad. Whether you had a great Valentine's Day or not, at least you're not him. 8:04, good morning. Happy Monday, President's Day. Glad you're here on KCMO 95.7 FM and streaming on the KCMO Talk Radio app. Well, if you had a bad Valentine's Day, it could have been worse. You could have been blown up for having a baby out of wedlock. This would be, theoretically, if this is all true, your 13th child. And that is quite a way to ruin your Valentine's Day, especially when you are the most, well, I guess I don't want to say the most famous, but certainly the wealthiest person in the world. That's what happened to Elon Musk over the weekend. Friday night, he got blown up by a conservative influencer, for lack of a better word, who put a post up on X, the outlet that he owns. That's a rough go, right? Claiming that 5 months ago, she, Ashley St. Clair, gave birth to Elon Musk's 13th child. She made her announcement at 6 p.m. on Friday night. So something tells me Elon didn't send flowers. Something happened here. I don't know what it was, but this does not just conveniently drop at the end of Valentine's Day unless you want it to be out there. Ashley St. Clair writing on X, 5 months ago, I welcomed a new baby into the world. Elon Musk is the father, she writes here. I have not previously disclosed this to protect our child's privacy and safety, but in recent days, it has become clear that tabloid media intends to do so regardless of the harm it will cause. So Elon has not officially responded to this, but obviously it's not a good look for anybody. It's not. And I'm not going to pretend otherwise. Now, I admire what Elon Musk is doing and attempting to do with DOGE. I don't admire how he's lived his personal life. If this is true, this will be his fourth baby mama. And if we're not going to celebrate it with Tyreek Hill, former Kansas City Chief, now with the Miami Dolphins, well, I'm not going to do it with Elon Musk either, just because I like what he's doing. I can appreciate Tyreek Hill scoring touchdowns for the Chiefs back in the day. I can appreciate Elon Musk with DOGE, yet I can also have zero respect for either guy's ability to be a decent father, no matter how much money they have, John.
We haven't had so much interest in paternity since Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker.
Oh, that's true. Oh, that's well done and spot on. Like, Elon is not somebody that I sit there and say, well, the kid's going to be fine. I saw a lot of people on the right side of the political aisle over the weekend commenting on this on social media and saying, the kid's going to be okay. Kid's going to be fine. Wait, if you don't say that about rap stars, then you can't say it about Elon Musk. Rap stars have a lot of money. Tyreek Hill will have made hundreds of millions of dollars. It doesn't matter. You can't buy fatherhood. You can't buy having a decent upbringing where mom and dad are together and are raising you as children. Doesn't matter how much money you have. I don't care if you've got $1 billion trust fund. It's meaningless. So, and then on the other side, there's a lot of this in conservative media, especially with some of these so-called influencers, where women will say, hey, I just want a simple life and I just want the farm and the couple kids. And this girl happened to be one of them. And now she's got her second kid out of wedlock. And according to her, Elon Musk is the father. Please spare me. I know it might be good for your Instagram. I realize it might be good for your social media brand as a whole, right? But there are a lot of people in this conservative influencer world who do not live by the standards that they promote on social media. They just don't. They're out there looking to party. And listen, if that's what you want to do, that's what you want to do. I mean, it's not illegal. I'm not here to tell you you can't do that or live that lifestyle. But please don't try to then come back on social media and claim like you're all about family values. You're all about, building that family one brick at a time. That's not the case for so many of these people. Just follow them and see what they're doing in their spare time. See how they are living their lives. They're total phonies about the whole thing. So I don't know if Elon's going to address this at any point soon. I doubt he will. I'm guessing he is full steam ahead on DOGE, but certainly is a rough way to end your Valentine's Day. So if you thought you had a bad day, well, just think you could have been Elon Musk. Could have been hit with, hey, I've got your 13th child, and now the whole world knows, allegedly. Now with that, speaking of DOGE, 60 Minutes did a huge piece over the weekend on this. And 60 Minutes actually shared this clip about how, and it's very typical of them. And Mark, if you could, I hate to do it on the air, but if you could double check, I don't see this clip on the screen here. 60 Minutes clip, last thing I put in this morning. So just give that a once over for me. But there was a clip from 60 Minutes last night that really, I think, stood out and was a perfect example of how people who think that DOGE is like the end all of democracy and the worst thing that could ever possibly happen, and how could people who work for the government ever potentially lose their jobs? They have no self-awareness. Absolutely none. And I thought that this clip that I saw on 60 Minutes last night, that they willingly shared on social media after the fact as well, is case in point for being out of touch with the everyday and average American, John.
Did they run that through their head first when they said it, right?
That's what I mean.
Things where you're like, seriously?
This is a classic example of being stuck in your own bubble. And here's exactly what this sounded like.
People are really scared. I think that, 12 days ago, people knew where their next paycheck was coming from. They knew how they were going to pay for their kids' daycare, their medical bills, and then all gone overnight.
Stop right there. That's Christina Dry, who was fired in the USAID shutdown. Welcome to the world of everyday Americans who live like this monthly, who lose their jobs and have to figure out what to do next. Why would a government employee be absolved from that? 12 days ago, people knew where the paycheck was coming from, and they knew how they were going to pay for their kids' daycare and the medical bills, and it's gone overnight. Says every person who's ever been laid off in the history of mankind.
Most of us don't get 8 months to get out.
Well, that's the other thing.
Usually it's like, oh, bye, see ya.
Yeah, see ya. Here's a couple of weeks.
Your box.
Yeah, exactly.
Load up, Johnny.
Or you know what? We'll send you the box in the mail. Even worse.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Everyone's gotten that. I mean, trust me. In radio, those stories are never ending. They could tell me not to show up tomorrow, and I wouldn't be shocked at this point.
You could tell a radio veteran, my office wouldn't have anything in it, right? Nothing to pack up, nothing to take home. We've done this circus before.
Oh, yeah, the old song and dance. But, what was 60 Minutes going for here? Outside of projecting how out of touch they are with regular people. Let's continue with this clip.
All gone overnight.
Let's put Scott Pelley in the big voice. All gone overnight.
Christina Dry and Adam Dubard fired this month in the chaotic shutdown of foreign aid distributed by the U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID. more than 8,000 USAID employees were sent home by the administration.
They're not looking for competency. They're not looking for if you're good at your job. They're looking for pure loyalty tests. And if you don't give it, you will be punished.
And they had to leave the building. And these are folks who had decades and decades of public service serving USAID across administrations, from, George Bush to Obama to the first Trump administration. And they were never able to walk back in the building again.
There was no process? No one explained to them why they were being relieved?
To my knowledge, they received an email, and then if they didn't leave the building, they were escorted out of the building.
Yeah, because everyone gets a reason for when they get laid off or fired. You know why they got laid off, Scott Pelley? Big voice. Scott Pelley sounds very serious. Peanuts for brains, but he sounds good. You know why they got laid off, Scott? Because we can't afford them anymore, chump. That's why they got laid off, because we got a $2 trillion deficit there, my man.
Try this one on. How about some real journalism where you let people know that what we've known for the last, 30 years, we're spending too much money, so there's not, no warning.
Yeah.
That's for no reason, no warning.
No warning.
It's pretty clear, dude. And if you were doing your job, they would have been aware of it.
In any other line of work, if you're running deficits or you're not meeting revenue goals, everybody in every department is kind of on pins and needles. Anyone in the private sector has probably been through that in some capacity during their working adult life, right? Dang, business isn't doing well. We're not meeting revenue goals. Profits aren't where they need to be. Boy, we're going to have some cuts here pretty soon. Not good. You'd think a government employee would at least have some semblance of acknowledgement that that's possible. But they didn't, because they think the gravy train just goes on forever. And I guess government employees are some kind of a protected class, therefore we can't do anything ever about it. And that's not how this is supposed to work. It's not how your life works, and it's not how your small business in Kansas City works, and it's not how the government should work. But for the better part of at least a generation, it's how the government has operated. And too many people settled in for a false sense of comfort that should have never existed. 913-408-7957. And on that note, there was a local gathering in the last couple of days on this front that we will share with you that involved our good friend, Emmanuel Cleaver, who I just cannot get enough of anymore. All right, this guy, as long as I can talk about him now, since he's got himself back into the forefront of the conversation in and around Kansas City, well, by golly, I'm going to do it.
You mustard moo.
I'll get you where Cleaver's been and what he did over the weekend on this front next on KCMO.
You mustard moo.
That's right. We're here with you. 821. Happy Monday, President's Day. Glad you're along for the ride on KCMO 95.7 FM. Congressman Emmanuel Cleaver held a listening session with federal workers late last week. And KCTV5 did a story on this over the weekend. And the headline and story goes on the note that Cleaver heard directly from those impacted by the actions of President Trump and Elon Musk. Cleaver held a listening session with federal workers and labor unions in Missouri's 5th Congressional District. And they note here they discussed what they feel are moves to undermine federal agencies and labor protections for civil servants. Cleaver said in a statement after the meeting, quote, "Civil servants are the backbone of our democracy." What? The backbone of our democracy? What is he talking about? The backbone of democracy are government employees? Like, I'm not saying you're not a part of democracy if you're one of, many government employees in the Kansas City area. There's tens of thousands of you. I'm not saying you're not part of this democratic experience, but with all due respect to you, you're not the backbone of it, and neither am I. Like, trust me, radio hosts are not the backbone of democracy in Kansas City or around the country. All right? So it's not like I'm saying I am and you're not. But you're not, because guess what? None of us are. The American people are the backbone of our democracy, not civil servants, Emmanuel Cleaver. What does that even mean? Civil servants are the backbone of the democracy? We can't have democracy without government employees? What kind of absurdity is that? Cleaver went on to say here, they keep our communities safe, our economy strong, and our government accountable. Yes, we must have a larger government to keep the government accountable.
How about that?
I mean, who's the musty moo 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 around
You
here?
mustard moo moo moo.
I mean, look in the mirror. That's the musty moo 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 as far as I can tell. Cleaver making his farm animal noises. Mad. And the government growing does not, well, it might temporarily keep the economy strong. It's how Joe Biden got to rave about his jobs reports. The largest employer in many months during Joe Biden's 4 years in office was the government, right? The government just kept growing and made the jobs numbers look good. And what then ended up happening? What then ended up happening is that, well, you can only borrow out of this thing for so long. They were propping up the economy by basically buying jobs. The jobs weren't there in the private sector the last 4 years. They were there in the government or in government-adjacent industries. So now I got Cleaver here. And yes, of course, our men and women in law enforcement keep our community safe. That's true. But, like, that's it. Let's not act like, everyone that works for the government is like a cop on the streets of Kansas City, because that's certainly not true. My goodness, we know that's not the case. According to Congressman Cleaver, writes KCTV5, more than 40,000 federal workers live in the 5th Congressional District, with about 80,000 federal workers across the Kansas City region. Recent reports suggest more than 20,000 federal employees nationwide have accepted a recent offer to leave their jobs. And estimates are this could result in at least 3,000 Kansas Cityans who work for the federal government being out of work. Okay. And if they're talented, there will be a job for them somewhere in the private sector. If they have skill sets that people want in the private sector, they won't be out of work long. They won't. And if your insinuation is that, oh, what are these poor people going to do? Then they have no skill sets that anybody wants in the free market, in which case, why are we propping them up with a government job? It's really that simple. It's not controversial. It's not like some crazy right-wing conspiracy. It's not even, I think, all that conservative of an opinion. It's just like a common sense opinion that I think most Americans would agree with. 913-408-7957. Let's go to Kansas City. That's where Jonathan is. Hey, Jonathan, good morning. You're on KCMO.
Hey, Pete. I understand, the attempt by 60 Minutes to say, hey, these workers are going to have hardships. Of course they're going to have hardships. I mean, I don't think even conservatives, if they're going to be honest, can deny that. However,
well, no, because anyone who loses their job, it's a hardship to lose your job. I mean, we all agree with that.
Right. But what I was going to say is, that's true. As you've been saying, it's true of people in the private sector, too. It doesn't mean it can't happen. It's going to happen, which is why, I've been through several jobs where they eliminate positions, eliminate departments, and sometimes it was my job, sometimes it was somebody else's. And what I learned from that is, people got to Dave Ramsey it up, man. They got to have an emergency fund. So that, you don't have nothing, if your paycheck stops coming because the job stops coming. And then Dave's real big at, hey, by sundown, you start delivering pizzas, you do whatever, and, takes whatever job in the meantime, and then hopefully you can get a better job down the road. But that's a lot better than just sitting there and being like, woe is me.
Yeah, man. I mean, and listen, we've all done it. We've all been between jobs. We've all had to supplement our incomes. I've done it. You've done it, it sounds like. And it's just part of being an adult. It's part of being a functioning member of society, right? I mean, there are times when I was early in my career doing this where I'd be doing radio shifts during the overnight hours and going to a golf course the next morning. Caddy 18 holes. Feels like a lifetime ago because, I had a lot more energy in my early 20s, it seems like. Now these 3 girls I have wear me down every single day. I can't imagine doing it. But there was plenty of stuff like that I would do all the time, or vice versa. Do 36 holes of golf and then not playing it, carrying the bags around, and then rolling into a radio shift for the overnight. I mean, that's just what you did if you wanted to get where you wanted to get to. You had to supplement income in some way, right? You got to pay the bills. It's how life works. But this notion of a protected class of workers because you collect a government check is complete and utter BS. And if that's the case that Emmanuel Cleaver and others want to take, if that's the hill they want to die on, please do it, because I don't believe it's going to work out for you with regular common sense voters on the left and the right.